Hello, fellow traders. Thank you for joining me on this second video that I make regarding the Forex Forex trading robot. I know I've been away for quite some time now. Apologies for that. I have just been extremely busy these past few weeks. But in that time, I have received quite a number of messages from people, mainly with some questions regarding how I make use of the unconventional forex trading strategy proposed by Dr. Marco, and also questions regarding the features that I use in my deep learning model, and so on. So in this video, I'll try my best to answer a lot of those questions. Hopefully I can answer questions that a lot of you guys had in the emails that I received. Yeah, so let's get into it. All right. Okay, so obviously first thing we need is data that we can use to train our model. And so how do I do this? Okay, to generate my data, I have this expert advisor I call Forex Tester. Basically what I do is I use it in my back tests just to generate data. I specify the period in which I want to generate data. So it could be from the 1st to, I'm recording on the 29th, so let's say the 29th of March. I already have data from the 1st to about the 22nd, so I don't want to do that. So just for demonstration purposes, I'll take it from 28th to 29th. And basically what this expert advisor is going to do is it will go into history and on the historic data charts, it will insert 2 trades at every given point for every 5 minutes. So 1 buy trade, 1 sell trade. After inserting 1 buy trade, 1 sell trade, it will monitor the positions based on a risk to reward strategy, risk to reward ratio that I define. So just to look at the source code. So when it gets to a profit of 2, so this and it's monitoring every single trade that it inserts on every one of the 28 major currency pairs. All right. So if it gets to a profit of 2, it closes that trade and marks it as a successful trade. If it gets to negative 0.2, it closes that trade and marks it as a negative trade. So it's a risk to reward ratio of about 1:10. Right. Okay. So it's going to monitor every position, close them, and at the end of that day, it will then generate a CSV file with all the conditions at every point in which it inserted trades and the result of whether that trade was successful or not. So I'm just going to quickly show you how that looks like. If we start, increase the speed a bit. So you can see it's inserting trades on every single one of the 28 major currency pairs. So 1 buy, 1 trade every 5 minutes, and it's monitoring those positions. So if trade gets to negative 0.2, it closes it. If it gets to 2, it also closes it and marks that as successful or not. So this will go on till the end of that trading day, actually specifically the end of the London session. It's another thing. I only allow the bot to trade in the London session. And then so do that for every one of the 28 major currency pairs. As you can see, at the end of that day, it then now begins compiling a CSV file for all the trades. It takes quite some time to finish, so I'm not going to wait for it for time's sake, but I'm sure you get the idea. So we can close that. And once that CSV file is generated with all the columns depending on all the features that I wanted. That then becomes my training data. Alright, now that we have the data that we need to train, we then can build and train our model. And for that, I will open up Anaconda, navigate to where the file that I used to train is located. That is terminal. Yes, so in here I have a batch file called generate.batch. Basically what that does is it collects some information from me that it's then going to pass to the Python file, which is used to generate and train the model. I won't go through the whole process because I've already generated a model. I've already built a model that's trained from I believe around August 2021 to sometime in February 2022. So that's already done, and that's been the best performing model on the different backtests that I've done previously. So let's say we specify 2 to the power of 6 for our batch size. For now it just takes in the batch size, everything else is hard coded. But yeah, it's just to show you what happens. It then takes the batch size, passes it into the Python file, and this takes quite some time, so I'm not going to wait for it to finish. But essentially it will then begin to create the artificial neural network. So it adds all the data for the specified period. Then make use of oversampling. As you can see, there are 3 classes. 0 is all the negative trades, 2 is the positive sell trades, and 1 the positive buy trades. So just apply some oversampling just to increase the numbers of these 2 classes that are far less than the first class. And just a disclaimer, I'm not a machine learning expert in any way. I am very much a beginner, just still learning about the field and everything. So you may notice things that you as an expert may not do. But in any case, I will not let this finish because it takes too long. I'm sure you get the picture. So once the model is trained, now we can proceed to backtesting. So the way I go about backtesting is I have this expert advisor called ANN tester, and basically what this does is it does 2 things. Firstly, it plots every single point every 5 minutes in the specified range that we want to test. So in this case, we'll be testing from the 20th of February till about the 23rd of March 2022. Because the period in which the ANN wasn't really trained on. So yes, so what happens is ANN tester will plot points every 5 minutes in the form of CSV files. So when I come in here, it appears. So for each one of the 28 major currency pairs, it plots points every 5 minutes. And yes, I've already generated the points before recording this video because it takes quite a long time, and yeah, I don't think I want to wait for it while I record. So that's already done. And once we have all the data points, we go back to, I actually shouldn't have closed that. We go back to Anaconda. In here, I have a file called ANN testing.py. So run Python, and what this is going to do is it's going to read each one of the plots and make predictions for the different plots, whether it should be a buy or a sell, right? So it classifies them from 0 being negative trade, don't do anything, 1 being buy, 2 being sell. Right, so if we run that, I'm also not going to let this run because I've already generated data. But if I was to do that, it runs the Python file, and it is then going to start making predictions for each point. So as I mentioned, I've already done this. I'm not going to do it again. Let's close that. And once we have our predictions, ANN tester will then have predictions for each point that it's inserted, and we can then begin to see how it performs. So plot will be false, can trade, set that to true, and then here I have these two values, single TP, single stop loss. So yeah, so Forever X is still very much a work in progress. What I will mention from what I've observed is that it is very good at identifying points of entry. So obviously, because of the way we train the model, it's trained for entries and not necessarily for exits. So I am still in the process of coding an exit strategy, which I think will make it perform much better than it is. As you'll see, there are some weaknesses in the way it trades right now because it doesn't have a proper exit strategy, which I'm still busy implementing. But nonetheless, it still is able to make profits most of the times. It does still lose trades. I mean, that's just realistic. You can't have. I don't think you can have a perfect system that never loses. But it does try to diminish its chances of losing quite a bit. So I have these two values, single TP, single SL. So it just pretty much sets the values at which the trades will be closed. So it will be this value multiplied by this multiplied value. So if it's single TP times that will be the take profit value, single TP times that times -1 will be the stop loss value. That just comes from some optimizations I did. I'll show you basically how I work with that as well. So yeah, essentially we'll use these values for now, and then for the multiplier, so 1 would mean it's trading the minimum lot size, right, which is 0.01. 10 would mean micro lot for each trade. 100 would mean 1 lot for each trade, and so on and so forth. Yes, so I guess since the demo is on 100,000, I think we can use maybe, let's say, 2 lots for each trading size, for each trade that it enters. So we do that, and then we say we want to test it for 20th to 23rd. So as I mentioned, I've already generated the data, and now we can just see how it performs. So if we start that, increase the speed a bit. So it begins to enter trades. As you can see, it's already, it enters a trade on the Australian dollar, Canadian dollar, which is the one that I'm currently on. As I mentioned, you can see entry is quite good, but you will notice it'll probably not be so good with exits. In any case, so it's just waiting to hit the take profit that's assigned before it closes any one of the trades. And that's another thing about the way this system sort of deviates from the unconventional Forex trading strategy proposed by Dr. Marco, is that currently, with the way it's set up, it monitors the single trades as opposed to monitoring the entire portfolio. As you can see, it's quite chaotic with the trades that it enters, but it still tends to achieve quite good results. Like this, I have tried methods where I just limit basically just one currency so basically just allowing you to trade one currency at a time, right? So in this case, it would only take the Euro CHF and drop the other Euro crosses and drop the CHF crosses and all that. But for now, I'm working with it like this until I finish coding the exit strategy to just make it a bit better. But in any case, we'll just increase the speed again. Okay, so at the end of that period, trading 2 lots per trade, it made about 14,000 US dollars. That's the graph of how it looked. For most of the trajectory, it was quite profitable. There were periods where it made quite a bit of a loss, and this is where your risk management then comes in and all of that. But for the most part, it was profitable. And so that's what I meant by, you can see some of the flaws in the way it trades, in that because it doesn't have a proper exit strategy, it tends to lose money. Some periods it loses money quite a bit and carelessly, and that's why it's important to implement a proper exit strategy based on I guess the levels. Could be support resistance levels or whatever your philosophy would be on exiting trades, but I think it does achieve quite a good it is a bit successful in the way it enters trades. So I've tested this over multiple periods, and it does seem to perform quite well and identify good entry points. So I will keep you updated on the exit strategy that I'm working on. I just have to code it out properly now. Hopefully at the end of April I can do another test from about beginning of March to end of April, and see how it performs then. I'm sure by that time I'll probably have implemented the dynamic exit strategy that I am currently working on. Okay, so next question I got quite a bit was about the features that I use in my model. So I think I will explain it in this way. So a lot of us that are followers of Dr. Marco's channel are familiar with graphs that look like this, right? I'm sure a lot of you that were asking questions have actually as well generated graphs that look like this. So these graphs pretty much give us all the data that we may need. So it all depends on how you interpret these features, these graphs, right? You can get different features from here. For example, obviously you have the value itself. So in my case, this is just the pip movement, nothing special. Yeah, but this is for each currency, right? You can find a way to represent your support and resistance lines. Maybe another example I can give is there's this value that I use. I don't have a really good term for it, but I just call it the moving energy, right? But basically what I'm referring to is, okay, let's put it like this. If you were to take each one of these points and add them, so at any given point you add all the points here, this should sum up to 0, right? Yeah, actually let me backtrack a bit. The reason I call it moving energy, for lack of a better term, is obviously relating to the law of conservation of energy, right? So it's a bit different in that case because this value does increase and decrease, which then I guess looking at it outwardly is not necessarily conserving energy, but within the system this energy, this is conserved, because when you add all the points you get 0, right? So what does that then imply? That means if we look at, let's say, euro, right? And in this period we noticed that the euro had a spike, it increased in quote-unquote energy. This then means that the other pairs have to decrease. Rather the other currencies would have to decrease in order to compensate for the increase in euro, because it has to get that energy, I guess, from somewhere, right? So just thinking of it as system internally, right? So let's take this point in time, right? You notice there's a bit of a gap between the euro and the second strongest currency in this period, which is the Canadian dollar, right? So if at this point where it was rising, let's say we were to keep all the positive currencies positive and constant rather, and they do not move. If the euro had to go up by that much, it means all the negative currencies would have to go down to compensate for that increase in the euro, right? So essentially that then gives us some sort of idea about which currencies are sort of controlling the movements based on the distances we notice between said currencies, right? So maybe that could be a useful value for you. I'm just using that as an example, right? And you think that value is meaningful enough, you could then add it to your features for your ANN to interpret in some way, right? So that's just an example that I wanted to use of how just analyzing these graphs can give you some sort of insight on basically what the strategy that you've defined for yourself. You could maybe use these graphs to generate some stochastic oscillator, and to you that could be an important value, and you could use that as part of your feature. So it just all depends, and maybe using that moving energy could then allow you to pretty much do away with some other features that you thought were important at first. So that could maybe sum up other features could be contained in that value, if you get what I'm saying. So that's just an example. I basically, all the features that I use are just from interpreting certain values that come from these graphs. I will mention though, I use different time frames as well. So the features that I add look at the moment, obviously the current moment. They will look at some values in history. Basically, say 2 hours ago, what were the maximum and the minimum values? What were the minimum values 4 hours ago, and so on. So there is some historical elements to the features that I add as well. So the model could have a picture of what's happening times past and currently, so it could make better decisions. I hope that helps in some way. You can obviously feel free to send me emails if you have more questions. When you do send me the emails, just do try and be a bit more specific about the questions that you have, because sometimes I have to think, if a question is too general, I have to think of ways to answer it, and this may take time, and I may end up forgetting to even get back to the person that asked the question. So when your question is specific and to the point, often I just sit there and type out the response and send it. So you probably get a response much quicker if you ask a more specific question. Thank you for making the time to just watch this video. I hope it helped in some way. If it did, you could like the video, or maybe leave a comment or something, and also consider subscribing if you want to discover more about ForeverX and what the future may hold for this Forex robot. Thank you.